Do you like apples?
Well, I got a number. How do you like them apples?
The devil came up to Boston. He was looking for some balls to break. He just got in from Quincy, where he'd rained out a lobster bake. At the Copley Tea, he saw kids on a fiddle and smoking a butt. The devil jumped up on a globe dispenser, said, dude, let me tell you what. I bet you didn't know it, kid, but I can fucking strum. You may think you're all hot shit, but you're just a fucking bum. I've rocked all the hot spots from the garden to the wang. I'll bet a lotto card and a pack of mobs that you can't fucking hang. The kid said, my name's Sully, and you're a stupid fuck. But if you want a party, I'm game to in a back. Sully, rosin up your bow and play your fiddle hard. Shit's going down in Boston and the devil deals the cards. And you could win.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to What the Hell Happened to Them? Jack Attacks the Cast. That's right, Jack Nicholson this season. I am your host, Patrick Skeyhill, and joining me on the line is Wonderbra Joe Vekeman.
Thanks.
Yeah.
That's me, Wonderbra Joe Vekeman.
And on the audio boards is Left Van Rensselaer, reminding me to remind you that you can email the cast at whathappenedtothemcast@gmail.com. And our sponsor this week is the Council for Apples with Low Self-Esteem, asking, do you like them? All right, Joe, what movie are we doing this week?
We watched Martin Scorsese's The Departed.
Yes, we did. We have a special guest this week, Boston Correspondent Chris Speakman, local artist.
What's up, boys? Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hello.
Chris Speakman, like Joe and I, longtime New England resident, spent a lot more time closer to Boston than we did because he's an old man. So we got to see a lot of the changes, and he's going to bring in some of the history, some of the Whitey Bulger stuff as we go through this Martin Scorsese flick. Is this our first Martin, Joe?
Yes, it is.
No Julia Roberts, never gotten one of those?
I don't know if Sandler ever worked with Scorsese, or The Rock. Can you imagine if The Rock did?
Rock seems unlikely, but Sandler maybe now that he's kind of, moving and grooving.
I'd love to see it. I mean, Sandler, was so close with the Safdies, I felt like. He's got that real New York style.
So I thought I had seen this movie.
Oh my God, you haven't seen this?
I guess I never had. I never saw this movie before.
Holy shit.
And I watched it just the way that Marty intended on an airplane. So, had you guys seen this movie before? I imagine so when it came out, right? Got all that Oscar buzz?
Yeah, I mean, I saw it twice in theaters, when I was...
Twice?
16.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, what about you, Chris?
I was looking forward to this movie when it first came out. Being a Scorsese movie and a fan of his classics, and it felt like there hadn't been a really good sort of gangster movie done in a while, and the fact that it took place in Boston and had the two big Boston guys, or two of the three, which I would call. Matt Damon and Mark Wahlberg, short Ben Affleck, I guess. It was pretty exciting.
Yeah, so you kind of, right, Martin Scorsese is this big filmmaking guy as you're growing up and stuff. And so what was the overall climate you thought for people when The Departed was coming out? Were a lot of people you knew kind of excited for it? Did they not care?
Well, Scorsese, obviously, I think for my generation, the big movie that really introduced him to at least for me, and I think people my age, was Goodfellas, and then following up with Casino. So those are two real heavyweights, I think, of the '90s, at least from that gangster film perspective. And we were sort of coming out. Boston was like a lot of the northeastern cities. We were sort of coming out of that late '60s, '70s, '80s sort of economic blight. Gentrification was setting in, and I mean, I say that in a good way because things were, cleaning up, and there was hope, and there was a little sparkle in the city, and young people were really sort of flocking back. I moved to South Boston in '99, and people were already saying that it was gentrified, but with hindsight being 2020, it was just the tip of the spear. But I mean, people, the old guard in Southie was, they weren't happy about it. Meanwhile, they bought their house for $35,000 in 1962, and were selling it for $850,000. So they were making out, but. Yeah, I don't remember exactly the vibe of what the excitement for this specific movie was, but the city itself was certainly in transition.
And then I'll ask you both, but we'll start with you, Chris, since you've already got the floor. You watched it before. Did you? Oh, I guess I don't even know. Did you watch it again for this? Did you not have time?
I've seen it probably 15 times, so I know it pretty well.
So then we'll just make it easy for you. Does it still hold up for you, 16 years later?
Yeah, I actually, I watched it with my son, who's 15, for the first time, I don't know, probably 3 months ago. So it is pretty fresh in my head. And yeah, it did hold up. It's, I feel like it's Nicholson's last great movie. I'm not sure how many he's made since then. Well, actually, but
Joe tells me there's two others.
There's two left after this, and you're absolutely right. This is his last great one. We know it's coming up.
It's funny though when you look at gangster movies. You typically think of Italian mafia movies set in New York, or at least the characters are from New York, like Casino, or that's a Las Vegas movie, but everybody's from New York. And this was sort of I think the first real take on something outside of that, but still being a gangster movie, at least of recent memory. So if I go back and think of the last great mafia / gangster movies, this is, to me, is the last great one. The Irishman wasn't really my bag. I feel like that story had been told before many times. And seeing an AI young version of De Niro was just a little jarring. So I kind of threw that one out, but I don't know when Donnie Brasco came out. That was another good one. That might have been around the same time.
97, 98.
Okay, so a few years before. But yeah, I really liked it. And I think that the cast is really like, the big stars in this movie continue to do big things. So you look back and this is like, it's got to be one of Wahlberg's first big movies that he was in, right? I mean, I know he had some other big ones, but I think he's gotten bigger since then. And I mean, Matt Damon was still pretty early on in his career. What year was this movie?
2006. So he had a couple of Bourne movies under his belt, but you're right about Mark Wahlberg. This is definitely the turning point in his career that made him like a big star. And
I'll tell you, the character that was my favorite character in this movie, and I think this was one of those movies where his career started changing to more of a character guy, was Alec Baldwin. I love him in this movie, even though he's not in it much. He's got one of my single favorite lines in all movies. Does anybody know what it is?
No. What
it goes like this. It's the scene when they're when he's suspending Mark Wahlberg's character, and he says, "I'll just quit," and he goes, "World needs a lot of bartenders." And it's just such a Boston thing because there's a bar in every corner, So I love him in this movie, and he's sort of. I feel like he started with that, with Outside Providence. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, but sort of like the character roles as opposed to being the leading guy, and I feel like he's just a better actor in that way. So, but that's, I know, a tangent on Alec Baldwin.
Yeah, I mean, he blames 30 Rock for ruining his career, but you might be right. This just might have been a better niche for him.
Yeah, I liked him in it.
I saw that movie.
Joe, you saw it then twice. You saw it for this podcast. How has it changed for you in those intervening years? You're an adult now. You've come into maturity. How are you feeling?
Well, I mean, I could do without the first 15, 20 minutes of just the constant F slur in this movie. God. It's just
we didn't know we were
jarring.
Insulting your Puritan sensibilities.
It's just jarring now. I don't know. I know it's authentic to how, especially that people talk, but it's just a little jarring. That's all. But yeah, no. Otherwise than that, this movie's great. I love this movie. It's just with Jack's other stuff now that we've gone through the early 2000s. I hadn't seen The Pledge, which I really liked, but with him, his role in it, not the whole movie on the whole.
Yeah,
but
we know.
He's good in it. He's just really he's turned the volume up a lot on this. He's doing a lot of the hits of Jack. Yeah. There's not really much nuance to it. Not that I was expecting it, but it's
well, it's a much for as prominent as he is in all the promotion. My expectation was that he was going to be a much bigger role in it. Right? And I know he's like a MacGuffin in it, but he doesn't feel like he's there a lot. So maybe he's like, well, when I'm on screen, I might as well chew up all this scenery so people remember I'm here.
He chews the fuck out of the scenery when he does the rat impression. That's incredible.
And it's also like how these later directors have been able to get him in their movies. It's like, just do whatever you feel like, Jack.
Well, here's something for you. Where did I see it? In almost every scene that Jack was in, they told him to improvise as much as he wanted to. Jack was the one that got free reins. Do whatever you want in this. Just go with Jack. That's what they told him.
See? Exactly. Let him off the chain. Or Witches of Eastwick style here. Let's go.
This is just wild. The script won. Didn't want the script win for best screenplay that year? Or best adapted?
That's a question we'll ask you later. I don't remember. It's adapted? Was it on a book or something?
It's based on a
60 Minutes episode?
No, it's based off Infernal Affairs. I think it's a Chinese movie, but I'm gonna look it up.
A Chinese movie? I was not expecting that to happen. It's very Boston-based. Is this movie too Boston? That was my first thought.
Hold on. Infernal Affairs starred Andy Lau and Tony Leung.
That is certainly a Chinese film.
Yes. So it was adapted from that. It's also like an hour longer than that one. And that came out in 2002, so it was a quick turnaround.
Very recent, okay. So I'm watching the movie, and the first thing that comes to mind is this is aggressively Boston. Everybody speaks very Boston. Everybody references a bunch of Boston things that nobody would really get if you weren't. It's like too much jargon in this movie.
Yeah.
You guys think that this movie, obviously it did well, but it would not have struck me as a movie that would translate well outside of New England. How did you guys feel watching it?
Citizens Bank.
Yep.
I didn't feel like it was. I mean, to me, it was a typical ensemble cast sort of Scorsese thing where they're all gonna. It's what I expected. Let's just say that. You know,
Okay.
I will say the one thing that I didn't think that Nicholson's Costello character was. They could have gone way over the top with that. I mean, you know, your typical Southie. Tracksuit wearing, Patty.
Oh, yeah. With that.
Like he wasn't that. So I liked that because, I mean, we know this was very, I know, Joe, you mentioned that it was based on another movie, but, I think that this was loosely based on Whitey Bulger as well. So they could have really that leaned into that, and it wasn't, I don't think it was as egregious as it could have been, which in a good way.
I guess that's the advantage of it being based off this thing from an entirely different hemisphere. So
it's just
you got to kind of build off of that, and you just got to tap into a little of the Boston Mafia stuff. Joe, is this a little too Boston for people, you think? Everybody interested in all the Route 128 references and Brockton stuff?
Well, it's funny that we feel like it's so Boston, but like they only shot in Boston for like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And they shot the rest of it like in other places. Also, this fact right here, Jack Nicholson refused to wear a Boston Red Sox hat during filming and instead wore his New York Yankees hat.
Fucking jerk.
What a scumbag.
I don't even like the Yankees.
I don't even think he is a Yankee fan.
Yeah, he's a Dodger guy.
Right.
He loves the Lakers too. He's an LA guy.
Yeah.
I don't even know he's a baseball guy.
Yeah, probably not.
I just want to get into how many people were up for that Mark Wahlberg role because Mark Wahlberg turned down that role several times, and it's so funny because I think that is
Mark Wahlberg was too good for this role?
Yeah. Isn't this his one Oscar nomination too? The only time he's been nominated?
Chris is right. Like, what had he really done? He did that David O. Russell film. Then, like, what else?
He did the Timber in Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Oh, yes. How could I easily forget that?
Which made money but was awful, and everyone was like, let's not do this again.
And the first movie I remember him was in that one with Reese Witherspoon, Fear. I think that was his first movie. Yeah.
Well, we're all forgetting Boogie Nights. How could we forget?
Oh, Boogie Nights. That was legit.
Yeah. Okay.
That's his one role that was like, oh.
That's our bad.
He can act, or does he just have a director that can work with him?
So he's just holding out for starring roles? Is that what this is about?
Well, I mean, yeah, Wahlberg's a star. He's the star, and he only does star roles. But the funny thing is, like, the movie he does, like, after this, like, he does two movies. It's Shooter, if you remember Shooter, which is now like a USA series, and then he made The Happening.
Oh yeah, okay. Another forgettable film.
Can I say something about the accents in this movie?
Oh, of
Please
course.
do. I was going to bring that up next.
Well, I think that people in Boston, when there's a Boston-based movie, the first thing you see in the write-up in the Globe or whatever people are talking about, it seems to be like, how did they nail the accent, or was it way off? Because it's been absolutely destroyed so many times in movies. And I think the character in this movie that butchered it the worst was the female lead. I can't remember her name.
Oh, Vera Farmiga. Yeah,
oh, terrible.
She should have just not done it.
Right. And I think, the more street you get, the easier it is to pull off, right? Because if you're doing a Beacon Hill accent, it's a little tougher. If you're doing a John Kerry accent as opposed to or Ted Kennedy, I should say, as opposed to, a Hood from Southie or Charlestown. So I think Wahlberg pulled it off best, but because he had that sort of cop street thing, so it's a little easier to lean into that. Matt Damon was somewhere in the middle, because you forget Matt Damon grew up in Cambridge.
Yeah.
He even though he plays these street guys and Good Will Hunting and this, he went to Harvard. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's good you bring up the difference between the subsets of Boston accents, because you're right. There is sort of a grid of affluence and education throughout the city that I think gets missed in a lot of these movies.
Just a quick note. So Scorsese said that Mark Wahlberg easily fell back in his native accent and joked it was so thick they needed subtitles.
Yeah.
That's pretty thick.
Yeah, I was surprised he didn't want to be in this film. It seems like he's always jumping into every Boston thing. I thought he was just breaking into all the casting stuff. Give me a role, I can do it.
I don't know what his deal is, but he had he was the last guy on the list. They're like, we'll go to Wahlberg. And then everyone's turning it down. They're like, can we get Wahlberg for this? And everyone kept turning it down can we try Wahlberg again? Because Dennis Leary was up for the role before Wahlberg, but he was busy with Rescue Me, so he turned it down.
Yeah.
Bad decision.
I like Wahlberg's youth, though, right, than Leary's. Leary seems a little too old and street.
Oh, everyone is cast perfectly except for Vera Farmiga. But they were gonna get Ray Liotta was up for the Mark Wahlberg role, who's also older, but been a nice reunion to have with Scorsese after almost 2 decades. It's just funny that he kept turning it down. He's like, I guess I'll take it.
Wahlberg's energy too of trying too hard, I think, is an asset to the role as well.
Absolutely. He's
he feels like he always has something to prove. I imagine that affects his real life a lot too.
Yeah. Okay. I got the shooting schedule. So, Scorsese wanted to shoot the film in Boston, where the story is set. The bulk of the film was shot in New York, partly due to concerns about setting up production and politics, partly because of New York's 15% filming tax credit. They shot in Boston for 3 weeks in June and 3 more in August. So we got more.
It's a long production window. Yeah. My goodness.
After the success of the film, Massachusetts created a 25% tax credit for filmmaking.
They did. Yep. I utilized that a couple times back when I was still making things over there. And then it went away, so I had to come over here.
Another bit of casting news. So this movie was originally set up for Brad Pitt to play the Matt Damon role, and he was supposed to be starring opposite Tom Cruise. How do you feel about that?
Wait, opposite Tom Cruise?
Yeah, Tom Cruise would be in the DiCaprio role. It's so wrong.
I mean, that's hard for me to see. Yeah, I don't see that.
He's way too much. He's way older.
Yeah, and Tom Cruise is an action hero to me. He's just not,
And imagine the accent. I love Tom Cruise. I love him, but
maybe he could have pulled it off. But I like Wahlberg and Damon. I feel like they were at the right ages for it. It was believable that they were coming out of the academy at the same time, and maybe I could have seen. I could see Brad Pitt in that role, but.
Maybe Brad Pitt now, but not Brad Pitt then. I don't think he was ready for it, because instead, which he ended up turning down the role. He was like, I'll put this aside for now, and then they made the movie without him because he was going on to make Babel with Iñárritu.
Tom Cruise to me feels a little too clean cut for the DiCaprio role.
Oh yeah,
maybe he could do the Damon one, but I just don't know if he could have that kind of rattiness that DiCaprio found here.
Yeah, he's supposed to be a street kid that splits time between the North Shore and South Boston. So, I don't know. I don't really see that.
The key words you said though were street kid. Tom Cruise is not a kid. He was like he was in his 40s at this point.
I mean, he might be like 5'4", but I don't know. Hey, Pat, I wanted to mention, I don't know if you're going to ask about the bulger stuff at all, but I was thinking about it last night, and I was putting some quick notes together just to remind myself. And I was thinking that, you had asked how the city was sort of reacting to this movie. And I think within the context of Whitey Bulger had gone on the lam in 95, which sort of put a cap on the end of that sort of era, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it made sense that the city was changing so much and he was about to basically go to jail for the rest of his life. It sort of was the ending. It was an appropriate ending. And the fact that he got away was a whole other thing. So that whole thing with Bulger played out from 95 to, I think, obviously until he got caught 15 years later. But when he went on the lam, there were just arrests coming left and right of all of his crew, and he was obviously an FBI informant, which is what Costello's character is based on. And when this was coming out in 2006, we sort of the previous 10 years, and it was an ongoing thing, so it felt kind of fresh. Like it felt like this was like, oh, they're making the movie about Bulger, even though it ended up not really being a movie about Bulger. So I don't know. I think that added to the excitement of the movie coming out.
So even though it wasn't directly on Bulger, people kind of enjoyed the nods to it.
Well, but yeah, I mean, it was clearly the fact that he was an FBI informant, but also running the entire underground, operations of the city, criminal underground, I should say, it's a clear nod to Bulger. I mean, Bulger was a rat, right? But the idea was that he was, this, I don't want to say mafia, but this, criminal kingpin who was also just, working with the FBI. So it was, that duality it's pretty hard to not make that connection between Bulger and Costello.
How does this one compare to the actual Whitey Bulger movie with Johnny Depp, do you think?
Oh, God.
I think that was very dark. That's what Bulger's story is, very dark. I mean, as opposed to, I always think that the Italian mafia, and part of this is probably, comes from The Godfather, and but it's romanticized, right? I mean, it's a family, and there's, we don't sell drugs to kids, where family comes first, and there's this La Cosa Nostra. It's just very romantic, and the Irish mafia in Boston to me was just brutal. There was nothing romantic about it. And I think that movie, the Johnny Depp movie, sort of nailed that a bit. This is more of a Scorsese movie. It just feels like it's like everything's going to tie together in the end. Yeah.
Also had 3 endings. Yes.
Right. Exactly. It just kept ending like.
That's why it's an hour longer than the Chinese one, Joe. So, Joe, you got some stuff, but really quick, I just want to talk about the elephant in the room with the Academy Award stuff. Right. This was Scorsese's.
Yeah,
Best Picture winner, right? Best Director winner.
Yeah, it's fine.
So, I did enjoy this. I thought this was a cool movie, a cool plot thing. I liked this kind of tension between the two moles and stuff. So I did enjoy it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly don't think this is Best Picture or Best Directing. Some directing choices I felt very odd. He's sort of very aggressive with his camera movements at the beginning that felt a little oversaturated. Then, of course, I just fucking roll my eyes at the stupid rat at the end crawling on the grade. I'm like, oh, thanks, Marty. We couldn't figure that out.
Do the rat is 100% digital?
Yeah, some of the special effects in this have not aged well, but that's just the way it goes. So
yeah.
And, I know a lot of hullabaloo has come out about, the X's in scenes with the people who are going to die. And I go, that's worthless as a filmmaking tip. There's no advantage to that, really. It's a little too intellectual.
It's
so
also something you just catch on the second time, I guess.
You might not even notice it, but it doesn't create any emotional effects. It's just like a little puzzle for you to solve, but that's kind of feels more distracting than engaging.
Yeah.
But yeah, so a lot of times it's been discussed that this was just like Scorsese's career Oscar. They're like, shit, how did we miss this guy? Let's give it to him now, quickly.
How did we miss this?
What movies before The Departed do you think he was more deserving? If he had to win the one Oscar, what movie do you think he should have gotten it for? Joe, you're a lot more tapped into this. Marty, why don't you go first?
I have a more unconventional. I mean, I still have the hits in the top 5, but my top 5 is a little more unconventional. My favorite of his is After Hours, followed by Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, then Taxi Driver, Goodfellas, Cape Fear. What would I give it to him for?
Yeah.
I mean, why did Robert Redford need to win for Ordinary People over Raging Bull? Why? That's a big why. And then again, Kevin Costner had to win over Goodfellas. Which movie really stands the test of time? Who's talking about Dances with Wolves now?
Yeah.
And it's all like white savior shit.
Certainly been canceled these days, yeah.
I mean, and then he was just in a weird like prestige rut. Like he wanted to do Gangs of New York, which just didn't pan out too well. I like The Aviator a lot, but it's not Goodfellas.
Yeah.
It's not the commercial hit. I mean, it still made a lot of money, but yeah, I mean, you should have won it for Raging Bull. That's just the answer.
What do you think, Chris?
I mean, I can tell you my favorite movies. I don't know what you guys are the experts in terms of what.
Well, the Academy does whatever it effing feels like, so.
Well, I would say that, I mean, it's hard for me to argue. It almost feels cliche to say this, but it's hard for me to argue against Goodfellas. It just, I feel like it defined that generation of movies. And for someone, I was a freshman in high school when that came out, and the entire 90s was
perfect time. It
was just, Goodfellas was the movie. I thought that was the greatest movie of all time at the time. I personally like, I actually like Gangs of New York.
It's good. Yeah. Sorry.
I liked it. Remind me, did he do, I'm trying to scroll through his IMDb right now. I know he did The Wolf of Wall Street, but he didn't do Catch Me If You Can, did he?
No, that was Spielberg.
I mean, Raging Bull, Mean Streets. I always felt like Casino was just a half-assed version of Goodfellas.
I've come around on Casino. I like it.
I like it. I just think if you're going to watch one of the, just watch Goodfellas, it's the same damn cast.
Yeah, you save yourself about a half
hour. But I am actually interested in the movie that's coming out soon.
Oh, Killers of the Flower Moon. Hell yeah. 3 weeks
away.
Yeah,
only because it seems like his little toy in the 70s and 80s and 90s was De Niro, and then since then it's been DiCaprio, right? And now they're both in it. Have they done that yet?
No. Well, I mean, in 1993, they did a movie called This Boy's Life, but it wasn't Scorsese.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, but they haven't done a Scorsese. So I don't know. This seems like his. This is their adults. They're adults now, not kid and adult. Right. This is his opus or whatever. But I'm trying to think of his movie. I would say Raging Bull for sure and Goodfellas for sure over this movie. But I thought this was a really good movie, and I think it holds up.
Have you seen Cape Fear?
I've seen Cape Fear. It was not I haven't seen it in a long time.
It's just so angry and violent, and it's the year after Goodfellas, and I'm just like, is he mad because he didn't win his Oscar?
Yeah.
I think
so violent.
De Niro was really good in that, but I feel like I have a hard time taking a movie seriously in terms of like Oscar buzz or or Best Picture if it's a remake for some reason. I know that's really probably not fair, but that's a remake, right? Wasn't Cape Fear
it's a remake from the 60s
ago?
film with Gregory Peck and Robert Mitchum.
Right. So to me, like, you have kind of a roadmap. Yeah, you might be your own take on it, but I don't know. An original screenplay holds a little more weight with me. Not that anyone's asking. Actually, you guys are asking.
we are asking. That's the whole point of the show. Yeah, for me, Raging Bull makes, like, Mean Streets and Taxi Driver are obviously very good, but they're not only in an aggressively stacked decade, but he's still kind of an up-and-comer, so the Academy's not fully noticing him yet. Raging Bull feels like a prime time to give him one in a decade that kind of sucked for films. But Goodfellas also, that feels like the kind of populist play they like to make these days. It was a crowd pleaser. It was pretty easy to digest.
Anywhere from 1980 to 1990... he should have won the Oscar. I don't care if The King of Comedy wasn't his, like, greatest work, whatever. The Color of Money won Paul Newman an Oscar.
I like The Color of Money a lot, too. But I always wondered how did it work out that ended up being a Scorsese movie? Like, because that's sort of a pseudo-sequel as well, right?
Yeah, after The Hustler.
Will you look up, Joe, what the other Best Pictures were?
I've got it right here.
Yeah, all right.
I've already got it. So the movies were nominated for Best Picture were Babel, the Inarritu movie, Letters from Iwo Jima, Clint Eastwood, for fuck's sake, Little Miss Sunshine, a movie that we all love and talk about it all the time now. God, I mean, it's just that like some movies just get stuck in time and like you're like, but I think that was important that a movie on that level could get that acclaim. Like I think that was helpful for the indie film. Alan
market.
Arkin got his Oscar for it.
Yeah, for the 5 minutes he was in there. Yeah. Another career Oscar.
The Queen.
Kate Blanchett.
Stephen Frears directed that. That's the one that Helen Mirren won her Oscar for.
Oh, Helen Mirren.
I tell you, I'm not overly impressed with any of those films.
I like Little Miss Sunshine. I.
It was definitely like a lesser year.
Yeah, but there's not one where I'm like, this didn't win, you idiots. I'm just like, man, fine, whatever. Pick one. Doesn't matter.
Letters from Iwo Jima is probably Clint's best movie in a while. The directors that year were Martin Scorsese finally winning, Inarritu, which is crazy that he was nominated and didn't win, because whenever he's nominated, he usually wins. Doesn't he have 3 now?
Yeah.
Does he have 3?
I don't remember the 2. What's the other one for?
Is he Revenant and he has
Yeah, the
Birdman?
back-to-back
Is there another
ones.
one? Yeah.
That's the only
it's
2
just
I know.
Okay, thank God. Clint Eastwood, Stephen Frears, and Paul Greengrass for United 93.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm shocked. This is the Academy doing whatever they're like, I don't know. We'll do
And
this
then
one.
that year, no one from The Departed was nominated for Best Actor or Best Actress, but in Best Supporting Actor, it was Mark Wahlberg. He got the sole nomination of the cast.
See, this is what I'm talking about, this career. No
Sole
actors
nomination.
were brought up, or no one thought any of them did great because of the accents, the cartoony accents. Mm-hmm. And yet anyway, still got Best Picture, Best Director. It just seems notable.
It just kind of sucks that Scorsese won in this year because the rest of it is just like, I mean, there were good movies that came out that year. Like, I like Children of Men a lot, but that movie wasn't nominated for shit.
Oh, yeah, I guess that's kind of crazy it didn't get a Best Picture. You could have replaced a lot of those with Children of Men,
Exactly.
and it would have been fine.
I would even put Borat up there with Best Picture.
Yeah.
Fuck it. Fuck it. That movie, it changed culture. There you go. Not for the better. No one said the better. Yeah, even the fucking animated features that year. Happy Feet, Cars, and Monster House.
Only 3 wasn't enough, huh?
I feel like a movie like this winning, Best Picture, it's sort of, the deck is stacked when you look at the cast, and it feels not fair. And it feels like rooting for the house and like Blackjack. Like you should have, I don't know. A movie like Children of Men seems like it really pushed the envelope a lot more than just throwing every single star in Hollywood at a movie, even though I really like this movie. You know what I mean? Like, you're basically just taking every big name and putting them in a movie and then going, okay, well, you win Best Picture. Okay, well, we should. You should win the World Series if you have Babe Ruth on your team,
Yeah, it's the 98 Yankees. You're like, well, duh.
Right, exactly. You're not even that impressed.
Yeah. It's actually worse if you don't win. Like, that's what's at stake.
Yes.
Click lost Best Makeup that year to Pan's Labyrinth. That's too bad.
Oh, yeah, we could have even put Pan's Labyrinth in this Best Picture thing. Like, what is I don't even know what the Queen is.
Speaking of royals, Marie Antoinette, the Sofia Coppola movie.
Yeah, I like that movie. Look at all these movies that would have been great Best Picture options. So let's go back to Jack Nicholson, the point of the show. So, K-Bar, right, what was your and the people around you's view on Jack Nicholson sort of as you guys were coming up, and what did people think when he was going to be into this film?
It was the first movie that I knew him. I think I had seen The Shining. I think the first movie I saw him in the theater, I actually I listened to you guys' episode on this, was Wolf.
Hell yeah,
Wolf.
And I was in high school, and at the time, very easily impressed. I was not as astute as you, Pat, when it came to film.
Joe would have loved it in high school, too.
I would have. This is my shit. So much
This movie is awesome. They turned into wolves. And what else had I seen? I guess Cuckoo's Nest. I had heard of Easy Rider, but I hadn't seen it. I I had some awareness of what it was about, some 60s counterculture stuff.
Well, let's pause on that, because that's an interesting point. Was like that, you were in high school, right, in the 90s? Am I remembering that right?
Yeah, 90 to 94.
Was it like a harder time to go back and watch these older films like Easy Rider or Five Easy Pieces? Like, would these have just not been at your cultural fingertips just due to the difficulty in watching the older stuff?
You had to just come across it on TV, like, some old, on HBO, and it would be, you'd catch it halfway through and you'd watch it and hope and it would pique your interest, and you'd hope that like maybe you see it again, it wasn't wasn't the dark ages. We had VHS tapes and VCRs, and
you said it. You said the magic word, VHS. This was the first Oscar-winning film to not be put on VHS. There we go. That's my fact.
Wow.
2006.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, but you'd have to know that movie exists. So and you couldn't just look up a person's career very easily, right? You'd be watching a movie and you're like, oh shit, Jack Nicholson's on this motorcycle film. What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, it was the same thing as, I'm a baseball fan. Like I had a book of baseball stats.
Yeah.
I remember I actually had a book of movies, and it, obviously you can't get every movie. But it was like the Oscar-winning movies up until 1988 or something like that. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, you have a certain knowledge, but IMDb was not a thing. So
88 was Rain Man. I think Rain Man won Best Picture in 88.
Okay, thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Rain Man.
Yeah, that's our Oscar Rain Man on the set.
It did win Best Picture in 88. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, so go back to it. That's what I wanted to kind of ask about. You scouring the TV guides, seeing if you could find, King of Marvin Gardens or whatever.
I don't remember ever looking specifically for a Jack movie, but I knew he was a heavyweight. He was just in a lot of stuff. You just knew. You knew he was in things.
He was in 60 films as of this movie.
Yeah, so and he was also.
Did you see Prizzi's Honor?
I didn't see that, but I know of it.
We have a real dislike of that movie on this podcast.
That is the thickest of New York Italian accents you would ever
Yeah,
Boston accent
gangsters.
came up here with Jack, and I'm just like, oh geez, I'm getting flashbacks to Prizzi's Honor and this horrible accent.
And John Huston's
everybody
directing.
loved his performance.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go back to your actual point.
Sorry.
Well, you just reminded me that Jack was sort of a villain around here, now that I'm remembering, because he was in the 80s. The Celtics Lakers were such a thing.
Here we go.
And he was on the sidelines, and I remember there was a Sports Illustrated cover. Magic Johnson was jumping on his back. You should look this up because it's and they're smiling, and I remember being like, fuck this guy. Who's jumping on Larry Bird's back? Nobody's jumping on Larry Bird's back, And he was the epitome of, he was very anti-Boston, especially in the 80s, working class town, and he's on the sidelines of the Showtime Lakers, which was glitzy in Hollywood, and so yeah, he was kind of I don't remember thinking that when The Departed came out, but I do remember thinking that this guy's a douche.
No wonder he doesn't want to wear the Red Sox hat. He hears you calling him a douche.
Yeah, he's probably associating the Red Sox with the Celtics.
Yeah. Fast forward right to Jack now at a Lakers game, looking like he did in the scene in The Departed when he dies, and he's just in the schlubbiest of clothes. Yeah. Doesn't comb his hair.
No,
he's total working class guy now. Gut hanging out.
Kind of admire him though that he can get away with it. He's made it to the finish line. He's doing everything he wants now.
It's the age we all aspire to be. Yes. The F-it age.
Right. He's been with every Hollywood starlet. He's made every movie. He's been on Oscars. Yeah, he can untuck it.
Joey, you got some more facts for us? Oh, I guess first let me go to the least surprising of all the breaking news to come out.
Oh, yeah?
This article from Entertainment by Shania Russell from September 25th, just a couple days earlier. Here's the headline. Martin Scorsese says Warner Brothers asked him to spare one of the Departed leads so they can franchise it.
Yes. I was going to tell you that. Yeah, this was supposed to be the only one that was left. Mark Wahlberg was asked to do a sequel, and I guess he wanted to.
Well, even before that, they begged Martin to let one of the two leads live so they could make a sequel.
So insane.
Let me read a little bit from this article. During an interview with GQ, Scorsese got candid about the many struggles of studio filmmaking, including the fact that Warner Brothers once was so invested in the idea of a sequel to The Departed, they purportedly asked him to alter the ending to keep one of them alive. What they wanted was a franchise, Scorsese said. It wasn't about a moral issue of a person living or dying. The Departed, which premiered in 2006, became a commercial success, blah, 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 yeah. Scorsese recalled that while the audiences leaving the initial test screenings were ecstatic, people from the studio were very sad because they just didn't want that movie. He explained they wanted the franchise, which means he can't work here anymore, and then he did Shutter Island, and that was the last film he did with the studio, because they kept being a pain in his balls. Scorsese, who has certainly not been shy when it comes to giving his opinion on Hollywood's obsession with franchise filmmaking, added, "The danger there is what it's doing to our culture, because there are going to be generations now that think movies are only these content things." So his strategy, we have to fight back against them. It's got to come from the grassroots. He cites Safdie brothers and Christopher Nolan, with his, $800 million boring science-y talky picture. Right, Joe?
It's like 850, 900 almost.
Where's that franchise? Like, they do a bunch of other science film. There's an Einstein film and a Newton film, and then they do, like, a Science Avengers and...
Is it Universal who put that out now? Because I think Nolan's done with Warner Brothers. They saw the trailer, and they're like, oh my God, who the fuck is Einstein? Get this guy on the phone! The guy looks like cosplay Einstein. It was so crazy. And then I found it was Tom Conti. I'm like, holy shit, what?
So then, then Mark Wahlberg, they thought to do a picture with Mark Wahlberg. Mark Wahlberg picked some idea and it didn't go well, and here we are today. All right, Joe, what are your fun facts you squirreling away over there?
Vera Farmiga met with a real LAPD psychiatrist to prepare for her role. The psychiatrist read the script and told Farmiga that Madeline did pretty much everything wrong.
Like dating all of her patients? She certainly has a type, though. She's certainly into rats in other people's organizations.
I mean, some of this shit was just yeah.
She should have gone to the Boston one. They'd be like, yep, this is how we do it. By the book.
Yeah. Well, also, DiCaprio's calling her out, like, in the office the whole time. He's like, I just told you I'm going to kill myself. You going to let me go?
Yeah.
Martin Scorsese, he really wanted Al Pacino for the role of Frank Costello because he had never worked with Pacino before, but he turned it down. Jack Nicholson was Scorsese's second choice.
Chris, Jack Nicholson has made a 60-plus film career of being people's third, fourth, eighth choice in films.
It's so crazy.
There's so rarely they go to Jack directly. They're like, you would be great.
I have a hard time seeing Pacino in that role, but...
No, it doesn't. No, Jack's not that much, like, taller than Pacino. He's actually a deceptively smaller guy, but, like, Pacino's really little.
I think I'm in my mind. Pacino is like the current Pacino, where he looks like a homeless guy who, who stuck his finger in a light socket.
That would kind of work then, I think.
Mid 2000s Pacino.
How you like them apples? Hoo-ah!
Wow.
No, so I don't think this is a Best Picture film, and a lot of it is because I like it. I think it's cool. I actually think you have three really great movies here that could have been Best Picture films. Mm-hmm. I think DiCaprio's Guy could have been its own film, a really cool character study, though we've done those films before, so maybe it's hard to stand out from that. Fine. I like Damon's character and sort of doing that, the clean-shaven guy that's been given everything by the mob, and now he kind of owes those ties. I think that would be cool to do. And I think Jack Nicholson's aging gangster, sort of letting his empire crumble under him because of his old age and paranoia, like... That's how most actual kingdoms have fallen. I think to do that in a gangster setting would be really cool. Mm-hmm. Jack Nicholson could really kind of bring a lot of quirks to it compared to the Don Corleone stereotype we'd had. So I think that could have been really neat. That's what I like, I guess, Jack kind of bringing his non-traditionalness to the character, his countercultureness to it. Made a lot of sense. I just would have liked to see a lot more of any one of those three components by itself.
Pat, can I just say one thing about the Matt Damon character that you just reminded me of? One thing that always bothered me in this movie, and this is I'm nitpicking here, but the fact that he was from Costello's neighborhood. They're like, who's the rat in the department? Who could it be? I don't know. How about the guy who grew up next to him? Maybe look into him, tap his phone. I don't know. It just seemed like everybody was really dumb with that.
Yeah, that's a very fair point there. Yeah, they should have brought that script to the Boston detectives. Why are we looking at this asshole?
Right. Maybe we need internal affairs to look into why no one was looking into him.
Maybe that's why he went to Harvard instead of Suffolk, so he wouldn't look too suspicious. Right. Too clean cut. All right, Joe, what do you got for us?
Instead of going to Alec Baldwin first, the first choice for that role was Mel Gibson, who turned it down because he was making Apocalypto. Can you imagine this movie with Mel Gibson in it instead? Well, I mean, Chris was earlier saying that his favorite line comes from Alec Baldwin.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't imagine Gibson delivering that line. Gibson's a fine actor, but I just...
Yeah, you spent a lot of time, Chris, with a pre-incident Mel Gibson. What would you have kind of liked seeing Mel Gibson in this movie?
Incidents. It's more than one.
That's the one everybody knows, though.
Before he was outed as a renowned anti-Semite. I think. I mean, at the time, I think first of all, I think Alec Baldwin was the right choice.
Absolutely,
just, based on what Joe just said. I mean, my favorite line from the movie.
Yeah.
But could he have pulled it off? I think it just would have been a little bit of a different character. I have a hard time hearing him with a Boston accent, or I think Baldwin sort of pulls it off.
He does.
But I mean, the age was similar, and I could see if he was a little more, if he had like, sort of a clean cut look at he might have been able to pull off like a Boston lieutenant, PD lieutenant or captain or whatever he was.
And this is the same year as 30 Rock 2, so it's like this is Baldwin's time. This is like peak Baldwin time.
Yeah, so let's start to wrap it up. Joe, do you have any last quick fun facts you want to get out before we go to last look?
Ray Winstone and Jack Nicholson did not get along, according to Ray Winstone.
Who is Ray Winstone?
Oh, is that Frenchie?
That's Frenchie. That's his second
Ain't
hand
get
guy.
along. Is this like a Jack Nicholson just like razzing Frenchie a little too much? He's like, I need a break, Jack. Jesus.
He's like, why do you sound British all the time?
Keeps like offering him like a crumpet or something.
They could have gone a different route with that, because if they really wanted to lean into the, I think he was playing sort of the Kevin Weeks character, which was Bulger's right hand man who was sort of the hitman.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And yeah, I think that whatever you just said, the actor's name is Frenchie.
Ray
He
Winstone.
didn't seem very South Bostonish to me at all.
Because he's from like the streets of London.
I mean,
Where's
he
he from?
certainly pulled off like homicidal maniac, but I don't know that. But I didn't. It wasn't. It would have been better if he was a little more cliche. You know, the guy who was who died on the couch in the movie from the gunshot wound.
Oh, yeah.
Is that the guy I was talking about earlier?
I think so.
I love his face. He has such a good face.
That guy was South Boston. Like, I look at that guy, and that guy looked like a
He's got a cousin named Sully. You just know.
without a doubt, Fitzy, or he's crushing Coors Lights down to the packy. But the other guy,
I think his name was Fitzy in the movie.
Was it Fitzy? The other guy, the other henchman there that was embarrassed when he had to bury the guy in the fens.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And I love that line by Nicholson where he's like, because that was a notorious place for, gay guys to go hook up back in the day, But that guy was not very South Boston. He had some kind of accent too, didn't he? Sound like he was like British or something.
It's all the people that were like trying and failing to do the Boston accent, and everybody's just like, fuck it, it's good enough, we gotta go.
That guy looked like he was a member of like Oasis or something,
There is a character named Fitzy, but I think it's a different guy that we were thinking of.
I'm sure there was. Maybe there's three of them. Fitzy number 3.
I mean, how do you have a movie about South Boston and not have Fitzy?
All right, Joe. What are your last looks on this film?
My last looks. We always wonder why Jack was doing this. I found out the exact reason.
Hey! All right, what is it?
He hadn't played a villain in a while. He wanted to play a bad guy.
That's true.
He'd done a lot of comedies. He wanted to do something more dramatic, and he wanted to be a villain. That's why he did this.
Yeah, get to do his Joker impression again.
Yep. And you know what? Let's finish the career with 2 more comedies!
Okay.
No, I like this. Jack's pretty good in it. He's really, really cranking it up. His rat impression, though, that's top tier Jack for me, though.
His Mickey Mouse impression, you were all for it?
Yes.
Now public domain.
Yeah. Excellent.
So now Disney doesn't want anything to do with Mickey Mouse anymore. All right, Chris, what are your last looks on this film?
I mean, I think it holds up. If it's on the tube, I'm stopping and watching it. I think it's probably like I said before, probably the last great gangster movie. And maybe I'm forgetting something, but in my mind it is. And to me, it's prototypical Martin Scorsese ensemble cast.
Yeah.
throw everything against the wall, and how do you not like it? But I enjoyed it.
I guess to me it felt like there's a lot of new faces for an ensemble cast for a Scorsese film, you know? Like, Joe's over there mad you're not talking about The Irishman being great.
It's okay. If you don't like it, it's okay.
I thought The Irishman was a little boring too, but that felt like, oh, these are all the Scorsese dudes. But, like, none of them were in this film, so it felt a little refreshing.
Mm-hmm.
I thought this movie was fun. A lot of quotable lines. Like, this is a great example of a movie Hollywood would hate to make anymore. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know, I thought it was cool. I thought it was exciting to watch. It was like a neat... When they kill off Jack, that all feels like it goes real quick, you know?
It
felt
does.
Like right, but they had to make room for, 2 more endings.
Yeah.
So, and then at the end, too, when Mark Wahlberg shoots him, spoilers, that also was sort of like, just like, it felt like, we got to end the movie, so just like, boom, Mark Wahlberg's in there, we're done. And that kind of feel like it came out of nowhere, too. But other than that, I thought there was some good, paced pretty well. There was some good tense moments in there. That the camera work tried to oversell at times that it didn't need to. Silences were kind of the thing that made it work, right? With these two guys trying to call each other on the phone and everybody's just like there. I think that's like a good moment that you found. So movie had some good moments to it, but not Best Picture winner. Why does Jack Nicholson do this movie? Well, we know. I don't have to say anything.
We do
Cat's
know
out of the
now.
bag. We now know. But I think there's an element of letting Jack do whatever he wants that sort of draws him to this particular villain role as well and working well with Scorsese. Does Scorsese talk anything about working with Jack? Did he like it or not? Did you find anything on that?
I haven't seen anything on that. I'll keep digging into that, though.
All right, well, we'd like to thank Chris Speakman for showing up and giving us a little bit of the local flavor.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me, guys. This is a lot of fun. I listen to the show pretty much weekly.
Thank you.
Many, many episodes. I enjoy it.
We'll have you back if you'd like to come back.
Yeah, we got more Boston films, I'm sure, coming down the pike. And to thank our sponsors, the Council for Apple Self-Esteem. How do you like them, they ask. And I'd like to thank Lev and Rensselaer from my audio boards and keeping the sound so slippery smooth. And I'd like to thank my co-host, Joe Vekeman, for popping in.
Thank you.
And I am your host, Patrick Skeyhill. You can find my features, documentaries, short films, video essays, animations, behind-the-scenes footage, and so much more at QuixoticUnited.com and social media, presumably with a similar-sounding name. Thank you all for listening. Joe, say goodnight.
Good night.
Well, I'm taking my time, I'm just moving on. You'll forget about me after I've been gone. And I'll take what I find, I don't want no more. It's just outside of your front door.
Test 1, 2.
Oh,
Oh, sorry. Don't mute yourself on the Zoom, Chris.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
sorry.
there we go. There we go.
All right, Joe Vekeman.
Hello. This is good news.
Sorry.
All right, we all have got this figured out.
Yes,
All right.
we do.
So I'm not echoing or anything?
No.
But we're all good. Joe doesn't need the AC this week,
No
so that's
AC.
good too.
It's 45 degrees
It's
out.
finally gotten cold over there.
It went from like 70 last week to 45 now, and I'm like, great. This is just New England.
Yeah, it's still hot over here. Got a new heat wave coming up.
The new heat wave.
A new heat wave. What is it now? Oh, yeah, it's a balmy 80 degrees over here at 6:51 in the morning. And we'll be this way until Halloween, and then it's finally fall over in California.
Good Lord, the ways this could have gone.
All right, Joe, you sounds like you've been looking up 80,000 fun facts over there.
I've got a great fact that doesn't even matter. Oh, I love it.
Okay. I've got some breaking news on the movie, too. So
What do
I
you
might
got?
interrupt you. It depends. If you start to say it, I'm going to interrupt you.
Oh, okay. Should I
Okay.
just say it?
No, don't. No, we haven't started yet.
Oh, okay. Well, I know we have some preamble, that's why.
Okay. I'm going to get us ready. I'm going to drink this water, and then we will begin.
Oh, the saddest fact. I don't want to read that one.
Shh.